Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our program today. Simplify and Demystify, Teaching and Learning Medical Terminology with the Medical Language Lab. And your presenters today will be myself, Jacqueline Scarborough. I am the Medical Terminology Marketing Manager, and also Rachel Milligan, who is our e-learning solutions and services specialist. I will take you through a few slides and talk a little bit about the background of Medical Language Lab, the uses, and then Rachel will be going into a deep dive with a live demonstration where we'll actually take you right into the program, right into the website to show you the ins and outs. If you have any questions during any part of this webinar, there is a Q&A box at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Please feel free to enter in your questions. We will get to answer them. Rachel will stop for breaks periodically when she starts the live webinar. So we'll have some break sessions for questions. If we don't get to your question right away, just hold on. We'll probably get to it to the second break, but I will try to submit all your questions to Rachel during our breaks. But if for any reason that we don't get to all of your questions, just sit tight. We'll make sure that we answer them. We won't want to leave anyone here today with any questions. So today's program, here's what you can expect to see, what we'll be talking about in today's webinar. I'm going to give you a brief overview, Introduction to Medical Language Lab, and really talk about the need that we saw in the field and how Medical Language Lab differs from other programs that are out there, and also where you could be using it. Then, as I said, I'll switch it over to Rachel for a live demonstration, and then at the very end, we'll go over some next steps. Things that you can do if you have more questions after today, if you are interested more, you want to have preview access and such, we'll talk about the next things you can do. You also see the bullet point for the system update coming December 27th. That's the week of. I'll go into that a little bit, and we'll talk about the updates because we're continually working with our projects to make sure they're at their best available. So it's just a very minor update. So I keep talking about Medical Language Lab, but what is Medical Language Lab? What is it? Well, we saw a need in medical terminology that students, they were having a difficult time retaining their terminology and were actually focusing on memorization. We wanted to provide a solution to this, to apply the method of learning a foreign language to that of medical language. Now, how does that come out in the Medical Language Lab? First, it's progressive in nature. Your students start with the basic skills in order to advance to more advanced skills. It's also multisensory. Students will read, write, speak, listen, definitely engaging all of the senses. And this is a need when learning a new language. It's also collaborative. It has a small groups feature where small groups can share and respond to each other's generation assignments in a discussion forum. And it's also very easy to navigate. There's no confusion. It's specific to your textbook's content. Each version of the Medical Language Lab is designed to the textbook content. So the lessons and activities match. There's no confusion and there's or content that doesn't match up with what's actually being learned in the book. So I mentioned how it's progressive, and how it does that is it advances from basic to advanced skills, but what does that really mean? Well, each lesson is structured starting with basic critical listening activities before moving on to response questions, where you must then select the most logical response after listening to an audio scenario. The generation exercise is both written and spoken. It allows students to progress to speaking and writing the medical language. Practice makes perfect, so a collection of practice exercises are included with every lesson. As I mentioned, it's multisensory. Students learn in a variety of ways, and this is why we developed the product in this sense. This speaks to many different learning styles and also the idea of active learning. Students are able to engage in many different activities in each lesson. So they're listening, they're responding, they're using visuals, through activities like labeling, even engaging in speaking and writing for the generation activities. There is also auditory, visual, and even kinesthetic learning opportunities for students. When you think about collaborative, when you think about online learning, you don't really think it could be collaborative. But the Medical Language Lab fills in the missing piece and uses the generation activities for collaboration. Here are a couple examples of the text and audio generation assignments. These have students write short answers and record themselves speaking the answers. And it actually allows for the option of small group assignments with these generation activities and uses this discussion forum where students can complete the exercise, record the audio, and upload so it would automatically appear in the forum. Then the students are able to review each other's activities and provide feedback. It's the kind of group interaction you may only really get to expect from a traditional face-to-face classroom, but now students are able to work together in the online space of Medical Language Lab. So the program was designed with a simple, easy navigation always in mind. Instructors can easily create classes, and students can find the next assignment. Rachel will go into the student and instructor dashboard, which is they're nice features, they're nice interfaces, and you will get a much better sense during this demo. So after you go into a class, you will see this screen showing you the progress of assignments, making it really easy to show progress for both students and instructors. So this is an example of the study plan generated by the pretest if it is selected. Students are provided with a nice visual rundown of the areas they may need to focus their attention on. It gives them the opportunity to know which areas they need for improvement. And then this provides an example of what the students will see in their gradebook. The student and the instructor can see how much time is spent in each one of these lessons, so there's really no guesswork. And then, last slide before we go into the live demo. So where would you use Medical Language Lab? Well, as traditional, accompanying the Medical Language Lab with a textbook and assign exercises as homework. You can use it online, either with one of the Medical Language Lab textbooks, determining which product is right for you. It's available for flipped classroom, and it's also available for self-paced. It can be used as a contained course, and then used with the pretest feature so that students can actually test out of medical terminology. So before I hand it over to Rachel, we do have a question we have a question coming up with the internet requirements for the use of Medical Language Lab. I would imagine it's something that I will have to look into. It's the first time we've had this question, but they would need to have Wi-Fi access. I don't believe it would be a problem into any type of high-speed internet, but they would need. Rachel, if you knew the answer to this, please feel free to step in.
Sure, and thank you, Jacqueline. I see that question as well, and it's really interesting. So with the Medical Language Lab, one thing that I really love about it is everything that you've seen that Jacqueline's talking about, all of the content that we're going to get into today with this live demo, it's fully customizable. So if there are activities that you wouldn't want to provide to your students, you can exclude them. If you teach the content in a different order, you can rearrange it. We have students from many different populations using Medical Language Lab, and I would be happy to circle back with more information for if you have questions that are specific to your program. Kim, who asked this question, I'd be happy to discuss this more with you one-on-one. But I want to thank all of you for joining us today, and I'm so excited to get into our live demonstration of Medical Language Lab. All right. Does that sound right, Jacqueline? Did you have anything to add?
I did not. No, I did not. I did want to just mention the update that is coming on December 27th.
Yes, please.
Yes, we are working on just updating our products. It will not be a major update. It will not be a functionality update. What it will be is just a design update. Little to no functionality will change. It's scheduled for towards the end of December during the holiday break. We will be doing announcements, so we will contact you, all of our users, contact them, let them know of the changes, but it's expected to be fairly minimal. It will just be a overall visual update and nothing to do with the features at all, nothing to do with the functionality. And we will definitely contact everyone and let them know of the changes as they are happening. But I did just want to give everyone kind of a heads up that this is something that we do on a continual basis, and we have one scheduled for the holidays this year. So over to you, Rachel.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jacqueline. And can you confirm, I've shared my screen. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes. Screen
all
looks
right.
great.
Excellent. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I'm so excited to take you through our medical language lab. And just to give you a sense of where we're headed, I'm going to start with the student side of things. We're going to take a look at the student experience of Medical Language Lab, some of the great content that would be available for your students. Then we'll switch gears. I'll show you the instructor side, some of the levers that you can pull to control that student experience. And I want to mention, don't forget about that Q&A box at the bottom, on your bottom right-hand corner. We'll address questions as we move along, so please feel free to type any questions or comments that you have into that Q&A box down there. We'll make sure to get to all of your questions. Also, if you need to maximize the screen to be able to see it better, there should be some arrows in your top right-hand corner. You can click on those to get a better look at our screen here. All right, and we'll dive right in. So this is our student experience of Medical Language Lab, so I'm on my student account. And if you're considering multiple titles in Medical Language Lab, I want you to keep in mind our functionality for Medical Language Lab is going to be consistent across all of our titles. So the functionality will be the same, but the content will be different. So if you're looking at this here and you think, oh, well, that's not exactly the content that I'm looking for, you might want to look at a different title. And we're happy to answer questions or direct you to resources to answer questions about that. So here on our student experience, I'll give you kind of the lay of the land here. We're looking at our class dashboard. We have all of these lessons which do correspond with the chapters. And what I really love about Medical Language Lab is it's easy to navigate. So your students, I think Jacqueline mentioned this, your students are never confused about what they need to do next. Everything matches up with your textbook, and the navigation is easy to use because we know even if the content's fantastic, if it's not easy to use, your students aren't going to use it. So over here we have a pronunciation guide. So this is really helpful to give students more confidence in pronouncing the new terminology that they're learning. We've got our great discussion forum over here that allows for some of those collaborative activities that Jacqueline was mentioning before. Instructor feedback is right over here. Some of the activities allow for instructor feedback, but the vast majority is graded in live time and loads automatically both into the student's gradebook and into your gradebook. So with that, we'll go ahead and click into a lesson so we can get a better sense of what this is really all about. So in the lessons, the one thing is that the pronunciation guide, it follows the student around. So at any time they can go in and listen to that vocabulary, listen to the new terminology, keep remediating, keep focusing on that pronunciation. But Medical Language Lab, it follows the process that you use to learn a foreign language. So in this version of Medical Language Lab, we start out with the ebook, so the sliced out chapter of the ebook of our textbook. The student would go in and read. Then the student watches a mini lecture video, so it's really reinforcing that content. And then we progress the same way that we learn a foreign language. So what do you do first? You start out listening. Do you understand what's being said? Here the students listening to audio clips. that are followed by multiple choice questions that gauge whether or not the student understood what he or she heard. Then we move on to response exercises. Here the student starts participating in the conversation. These are, again, audio files that are followed up by questions, and the student chooses a response, so they start to participate in the conversation. Then we have generation exercises. As you become fluent in the language, you start using the language yourself. Recording yourself with the audio generation. This allows the students to record themselves pronouncing this language, so you can gauge their comprehension by their pronunciation. Or the text generation exercises. The students start using the vocabulary in sentences, start using that language themselves. Then practice exercises. These are a lot of different ways for the students to keep learning that material. You never really know what's going to stick with your students, so these are designed to be fun. Crosswords, word searches, and flashcards, labeling activities, all of these great exercises here. So now we can go ahead and jump in to one of these exercises. And we can really get a sense of what this is going to be like for your students. Maybe I'll pause really quick just to see if we've had any other questions come in. Jacqueline, have we had any questions?
My apologies, Rachel.
No, you are fine.
To have some problem with some sounds. We had a question come in regarding what type of device can this be used on? Can it be used on iPads? Can it be used on their phones? Can it be used on a student's phone? Is it only meant for laptops?
Excellent question. So Medical Language Lab uses responsive design, which means a student can be using this program on their computers, on their laptops, or on their smartphones, or on tablets. So really they can be using any device that they like. And this is really helpful because the student can be reviewing this material, completing these exercises on the go. So they can really maximize their study time that way. Any other questions, Jacqueline?
We have one more question.
Great.
Question is, how long do the students have access to Medical Language Lab?
All right. And correct me if I'm wrong, the access is for 2 years. Is that right,
Yes.
Jacqueline?
That is correct, yes.
Because we know this content can be used across a curriculum. The students also might want to go back and review the content in other classes. So 2 years the students have access for. All right. Anything else?
That's all we have for right now. But if anyone who is listening, if you're interested, please feel free to submit your questions.
Yep. Don't forget about that Q&A box. All right. So I'll dive into one of our activities here. And this is a response exercise. So like I said before, this is where the student really starts participating in the content, participating in the conversation. And one thing that I really recommend, if this is something that you are interested in, we would be happy to provide you with temporary access so you can go in and take a look and take a listen to this content yourself. But here we have an audio recording that the student can listen to as many times as they like before they continue to their questions.
Hello, Victoria. What brings you in today?
Hi, Dr. Xavier. I'm a little worried about a spot on the back of my neck.
It's always a good idea to have skin changes checked out. I'll take a look.
So with these audio recordings, they're really well done, and the student would listen to the audio recording and then choose a response that the doctor, this doctor here, would use in the context of the conversation. So this might be a good time to let you all know that I do not have a background in medical terminology, and I'm definitely answering all of these questions incorrectly. So thank you for bearing with me. Here we've got this pop-up after I choose an option, and this indicates there are different grading rules in Medical Language Lab. And my instructor in this case is allowing me to review an exercise as many times as I like, so to practice the exercise as many times as I like until I'm confident in my answers, then submit my work to the gradebook. But we'll click grade today just so you can see what that would look like. And here we've obviously I've answered the incorrect answer. And what's great about this is we bring it full circle. So we have an audio clip that simulates the response that the student might get if they chose that answer.
Aggressive skin cancer? Oh, no. Do you think that's what I have?
So it really brings it full circle for the student, and it's really engaging. So I think it's definitely worth your time to take a look, take a listen to this content. If this is something you're interested in, see if it's going to match up with your program's needs, if it would engage your students. So that's the response exercise. And like I was saying before, the navigation here is really easy. The student can choose to replay the scenario. They can view the transcript of the conversation. They can try the exercise again, or they can move on to their next assignment. They're never confused about what they could do next. Or if they want to move around in this same lesson, all they have to do is click this quick jump to activities, and it's going to open up all of the exercises that they could complete within this chapter. And the student can jump around, work at their own pace, work through this great content. So maybe I'll jump over to one of our practice activities here. These, as I said before, they're designed to be fun. You never really know what's going to stick with your students, so these are drag and drop activities. And I'm sure I'm building words that don't even exist. But your students can be dragging and dropping these answers up here, and it's engaging them in the content in a different way, really just getting them in there and staying with the content, getting that review that they need. Maybe I'll jump over to our flashcards. There are flashcards here in the practice activities. You can imagine, as I said before, it's responsive design, so the students can be reviewing this content on their smartphones when they're on the go. You can imagine the flashcards might be helpful in that regard. Don't have to carry around all those paper flashcards anymore. They're just right there on your phone. So this is some of the student experience, and everything that your student does here in Medical Language Lab is going to load automatically into your student's gradebook. And the student gradebook and the instructor gradebook, they're consistent, so it's going to be the same information in both. There's never going to be a question about, what your student's doing, and the student will always have everything that they've done loaded into this gradebook. We've got their average grade. We've got the time spent, which I really like. It gives you that window into work habits. So if I were your student, you would definitely talk to me because I'm spending mere seconds on some of these lessons. But we can see a higher level of detail. You can really get as much information as you like here in the gradebook. So this is the student experience. And before we switch gears, Jacqueline, have we had any other questions come in so far?
Hi, Rachel. Actually, we have a couple questions that came in.
Excellent.
So first question is, can the instructor choose which activities to assign the student?
Fantastic. And I think that's a really good segue into our instructor side. We'll talk about some of the levers you can pull to control the student experience. But do we have any other questions right now?
Yes, actually, yes. We have one more question, which is, what is the cost of the 2-year access? And actually, I can answer that one. The cost of the 2-year access is completely free. It is included with the adoption of the textbook. So it's included with the textbook that they purchase. There is an access code that's on the inside cover of the text, so that way they can go in and unlock Medical Language Lab. So I think we also have one more question for the activities related to the chapter. Are they all assigned to the students, or is it selected and assignments customized or built by the instructor of the course? And I think that's something you're just about to get into, right, Rachel?
Yeah, let's switch gears over to our instructor side, and I think that's going to answer some of the questions that we've had come in. Though feel free to chime in that Q&A box if I'm not answering your question totally. Don't want to leave anybody hanging. So I've just switched gears over to our instructor side. And when you log into Medical Language Lab, you won't have 18 classes here. It'll be a lot clearer for you to understand. But when you log into Medical Language Lab, what I really would recommend if you're reviewing this product is that you take a look at this Preview Student View. That's your ticket in to all of the great content we were just looking at. So when you click on the Preview Student View, it'll open up all of the content of Medical Language Lab out of the box. And I want you to keep in mind that everything we see here is fully customizable. So if you teach it in a different order, you can rearrange it. If you see something you're not going to cover, you can exclude it. But all of that great content you can access through that Preview Student View. The next thing that I would recommend if you're reviewing Medical Language Lab is taking a look at this Davis Plus product page. That's our home for all of the instructor resources for our books, Davis Plus. So if you click on Davis Plus product page, it'll take you over to our instructor resources, all of the PowerPoints, test banks, all of those great resources you'll want to take a look at. And if you look at the student experience, you look at Davis Plus, you like what you see, the next thing that I would recommend is creating a class. And that's how you can have your students see the content that you want them to complete, and all of their work loads automatically into your gradebook. So we'll take it for a spin right now. I'll click Create Class. And this opens up the class management wizard. So that's where we can rearrange the content, exclude content if we don't want our students to cover that. Everything you want to do with your class is right here. But there's really two different paths you could take. Say you look at the student experience, you think, I love it all. I want to include everything, and I want it exactly as it is right here. Then I have good news for you. This is the last screen that you see. Class creation would take less than a minute, maybe less than 30 seconds. We can type in a class title. We'll type in a start date and an end date. And keep in mind, the end date is not the last day that your students have access to Medical Language Lab, because they do have that access for 2 years. The end date is just the last day your students can submit work to your gradebook. If you have a lot of students, or if you just like saving time, auto-enroll students is a great feature. When your students enroll in your class by inserting this class ID, they'll automatically be enrolled, and you won't have to go in and manually approve all of your students. It's going to save you a lot of time. So the way that your students gain access to Medical Language Lab is they insert their access code, they redeem their access code from the inside cover of their textbooks, or they purchase access online. Then they enroll in your class by inserting this class ID. And we'll click Save and Continue, and we've just created a class. But like I said before, we've got those two paths. You can use the default settings, and you're done. Or today, we will check out those customized settings. So we'll see some of the settings that you can flex to really create a class that reflects the way that you teach. So here we have the great pretest that Jacqueline was mentioning before. This is really nice because it generates that study plan for your students. So you can choose whatever content you're including in the class that you want the pretest to cover. You can randomize questions if you like. If you don't want your students looking at each other's screens, you can generate that study plan, or it's consistent. You don't have to include it. So it's really, you can flex this any way you like. If you don't want to include something, you don't have to. If you want to rearrange it, you can do that as well. So we'll click Save and Continue to move on to Lesson Reorder, which is where you can rearrange that content. So say you're teaching this in a different order than how it is in the textbook. You just drag and drop to rearrange it into an order that reflects the way that you teach. Or if there's content you're not going to include, drag it over to the right, and that takes it off the menu, so to speak. So anything over here, your students would not have access to it, and it wouldn't show up on their dashboards. So that's Lesson Reorder. Then on the next screen, which is Lesson Settings, you can really roll up your sleeves, dig into the weeds, so to speak. You can customize to your heart's content. So here you can set start dates, due dates, grading rules, You can exclude content if you don't want to include it. Everything that you might want to do is right here at your fingertips. With the start dates, this is the first day that a lesson shows up on your students' dashboards. I find a lot of instructors like to use this feature to pace out the content into bite-sized chunks of information so their students don't become overwhelmed by a ton of content right at the front end of the semester. You might do week 1, lesson 1, week 2, lesson 2, bite-sized chunks. The due date, you can set the due date as well. Grading rules. The default grading rule here is initial practice, then grade, which I mentioned before. It allows the students to practice as many times as they like till they're confident in their answers. Then they submit work to the gradebook. Or, if you want to flex it a different way, grade on first attempt. That turns an activity into a test. You see their first attempt, then they can practice afterwards. Or, if you don't want your students to focus on grades at all, just focus on the content. Practice only is for you. It allows your students to practice the activities, but they don't worry about grades. Then down here, all of these settings are for the lesson level, but if you want to mix and match settings, we allow for that as well. So you really can flex it any way you like. The different exercises, you can set different start dates, end dates, grading rules, or if there's something you didn't want to include, say you didn't want to include the generation exercises, simple as unchecking the exercise, and then your students will not have access to it. It won't be included in your class. So you can really create a class in Medical Language Lab that reflects the way that you teach. Then we'll continue to our post-test settings. I find a lot of instructors like to use this for final exam prep. Very similar to our pre-test settings. Again, if you don't want to include it, you don't include it. Any way you like, you can flex it. We'll save and continue. And then this final screen, once you've completed all of that customization, you'll want to check your work. So this page, the class overview, shows you all of the lessons that are included in your class, all of the content, all of the settings. If you want, you can print it. Who doesn't like a checklist? And then you're done. You've created your class. You've customized your class. So like I said, if you're using the default settings, probably take you less than a minute, maybe less than 30 seconds. Customizing your class, maybe less than an hour, but the focus is really going to be on the content, deciding what you want to include, creating a class that works well for you. So we really want that focus to be on the content. So Jacqueline, have we had any questions come in about class creation or about anything else?
We have several questions actually. So
wonderful.
We got lots of questions. Very
great
group today.
Love it.
We have a couple questions regarding what textbook. We were talking less about that it comes with the textbook, and we had some attendees ask about what textbook and how much are the textbooks? What are the costs of the textbooks? So it's basically we have 5 different textbooks that go along with Medical Language Lab. The first one is publishing a new edition this early spring in 2017. That's Medical Terminology Systems. It's the 8th edition coming. We also have MedTerm in a Flash, MedTerm Express, MedTerm Simplified, Medical Language Terminology in Context. These books range in price from about $53 to $86. And again, Medical Language Lab is included. It's best to have a discussion with your educational consultant or with myself or Rachel to really figure out what text is best for you, best for your class. The next thing was someone asked if they could share this webinar. Definitely. We will be sending out a video recording of this webinar probably either this week or the early beginning of next week. So we will definitely have that out to you so that you can share that with your colleagues. And then last 2 questions regarding if you rearranging the content in Medical Language Lab, is it hard for students to match up with the content in the book?
That's an excellent question. And what's really great about Medical Language Lab is it is designed to pair with your textbook. So it really will match up with your syllabus. If you're using the textbook using Medical Language Lab, it's consistent. So your student won't be confused about which chapter matches up with which section in Medical Language Lab.
And then one last question. It's asking if we can upload, if they use Juniper Ed for grading, can they upload grades to the gradebook, or do you have to use the one in Medical Language Lab?
Excellent question. So that actually segues into my next topic. So we've got our instructor gradebook. Let's just move right in there. Once your students start completing work, you'll want to see what they're doing, and everything that they do loads automatically into your gradebook, so you see all of your students' progress. And I'm looking here at a sample gradebook, and I want to call your attention to this Export Gradebook button. Our gradebook is compatible with all the major learning management systems. Right now, it's my default is Moodle, but we're compatible with Blackboard, Canvas, D2L, you name it. So all you do is export your gradebook. It downloads the spreadsheet onto your computer that you then import into your learning management system gradebook. So you can have everything in one place. It's easy to do. So it's compatible with all the major learning management systems. So if I scroll down here, I see all of my students and I see all of their average grades. Again, I'm seeing that time spent really giving me that window into work habits. If I want more information about a student, all I have to do is click View Details. It opens up all of the lessons that the student has completed. Again, we've got that time spent. And if I want a higher level of detail, I click View Details again, and it's going to open up all of the exercises the student has completed, how many attempts they've made, time spent, the date that they completed it. And if I want even more information, all I have to do is click on the exercise. It's going to open up this feedback that the student actually received and their actual answers. So I'm really able to see where my students are struggling and where they're succeeding. So that's our instructor gradebook. I think that probably answers the question about our ability to export grades into a learning management system. Do we have anything else come in, Jacqueline?
Not at this time, Rachel. I think you're
not at this time. Excellent. So just some housekeeping notes. Say you create a class, you complete a lot of customization, and you are teaching the same class in a following semester or maybe next year. This clone class feature is for you. So you're able to create a class and clone it out. So you would copy it out. It's going to carry over all the customization that you completed. Or say you're teaching multiple sections of a class. You can create a master class, then clone that class out. You won't have to complete all of that customization again, and it's consistent. Or say you have a colleague who's teaching the same class. You could create that master class, copy it out, and add your colleague as an instructor on that class. We also have different access types available. So say you have an adjunct who's teaching a section of your medical terminology class. You could create that master class, copy it out, add the adjunct as an instructor in read-only mode, then that material is going to be consistent. Or you could add the instructor as an FYI, get us all out of our silos, see what our colleagues are doing in Medical Language Lab so we're not sending emails back and forth trying to figure out what customization was completed. So we really try to make it as easy and as flexible for you to use this tool the way that you teach. So that's cloning a class and our multiple instructor functionality. I'm happy to answer any other questions if you want to use that Q&A box in the bottom right to type them in. But just some closing thoughts. This has been a really broad overview of Medical Language Lab. If you have questions that are specific to your program, we're happy to answer them. I'd be happy to schedule a one-on-one with any of you if you want to take a closer look at any of these features. And I'm as Jacqueline mentioned, I'm an e-learning specialist here, and our team, if you do decide to adopt, we're happy to meet with you, help you set up your course, really get you set up for success at the start with using Medical Language Lab. So thank you all so much for your time, and Jacqueline, I'll turn it over to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Rachel. We did have one last question that came in after the last break. I'll want to sneak this in here before we end the webinar. And the question is, can you go in an open exercise? Can you go in and open an exercise just for one student that maybe missed the first due date?
So we don't have that functionality at this time, but Becky, I see. Becky, thank you for that question. And another highlight of being able to assist instructors with getting the course set up, we're happy to show you different ways that you might use the tool. It's a really flexible tool in a lot of ways that you might use it to address those kinds of problems. We find a lot of instructors using this as that kind of passport to class or ticket to class model, and we have different suggestions for settings that might make it a bit easier to use if you're not as worried about due dates for your students. So that's an excellent question, and I'd be happy to talk more about that with you one-on-one.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I just want to go over just some next steps about what you can do, and Rachel hit on a few of them. And that is, you can get preview access. If you would like to go in and play around with it a little bit and see really what you think and you know, just test it out for yourself, please let us know. There will be a survey that will pop up after you exit this webinar. And if you had a question that maybe you'd like to discuss in further detail with either myself or with Rachel, please feel free. There is another option. You can put your question in there. So please feel free to let us know that. Also, like I mentioned, you can visit Medical Language Lab, try it out on your own. If you're interested in a personal one-to-one demo, again, Rachel had mentioned that, please just email demo@fadavis.com. You can email us regarding demo, regarding questions, if you didn't get a chance to put it into the survey. And then just one last thing I wanted to mention is that we offer a lot of support options. We don't just leave you off, set you up the program, and then leave you off. We offer so many support options through Medical Language Lab, and if you decide to request preview access, you can actually go in there and see several of them. And I will be sending you a follow-up email to watch the webinar on demand, and then you can also share that with your colleagues. In that email, I'll actually send out the instructor guidelines, a walkthrough, PDF. So we provide a multitude of resources, as well as a customer service department. So if you have any questions, any tech issues, any questions of you're not sure how to do something, we have a multitude of resources available at your disposal. So thank you so much to everyone who joined us today. Thank you to Rachel for doing an excellent demo. And again, please reach out to us if you have any further questions. But thank you so much for joining us today and for learning about Medical Language Lab.